Hello everyone, and welcome to a very nice game of chess that happened only a couple days ago, and I've been asked many times to cover this game on our channel. It's a game between Lily and Mokele Mbembe, an unknown challenger. Some people speculate that it might be Finn, but who knows. So in this game we will have a couple very nice post-video moments, and the game is just brilliant. So without further ado, let's just hop into the action. So Mokele Mbembe with the white pieces opens with e4. Sorry about that. And Lily responds very calmly with b6. We have knight to f3 and bishop to b7. And this position has been reached many times, most notably in 2019. Dinglerian had this position against Jan Nepomniachtchi. Timur Radjabov had it against Vasily Ivanchuk. Pavel Eljanov had it against Magnus Carlsen. And Vladimir Kramnik has had this position many times. And the main line here would be knight to c3, then e6, then d4, bishop to b4 pinning the knight, and bishop to d3 protecting the pawn, because if at some point the bishop captures, then this pawn on e4 would be unprotected. And both our players really know this position very well, so we have something different. We have d3 by Mokele Mbembe, and this position has been reached several times, and the known moves here are e6, g6, also c5 and d5 are other possible moves. And not many games on the highest level have reached this position. The highest rated players were Dmitry Bocharov against Bahadur Jabava, and the game ended with black winning in this position. But here Lily tries to surprise his opponent. He plays a very interesting move. He plays f6, and it is as of move 3 that we have a completely new game. So let's see how Mokele Mbembe can adapt to such an unexpected move. So again, this move is probably not the strongest, but it can bring some chaos into the game, and it supports nicely future development of the pawn to e5. So let's see how it goes. We see Mokele Mbembe just calmly continuing development, so developing knight to c3, and we have e5. We have bishop to e3, and the bishop comes, dark square bishop comes to b4, just pinning the knight. And let's see if we have some interesting action going forward. Mokele Mbembe doesn't want to have his pawns doubled, so he just protects the knight with the queen, and we have Mokele Mbembe trying to kick away the bishop. And this is kind of tricky position, because there is not much you really can do with the bishop. If you remove the bishop and retreat, you just lose it. It just gets trapped. So obviously Lily doesn't want it. Also, retreating here isn't as great, because you will have to double up your pawns. So obviously Lily doesn't want it. The only possible square to retreat would be probably d6, but again, the bishop isn't doing that much there, so Lily just eliminates the knight, and we have queen recapturing. And then Lily just strikes in the center with d5. It is a pretty nice move. It's trying to open the center a bit, and also there is a potential trap here, because if Mokele Mbembe doesn't react, for example, if he just castles here, then we have this advancement of the pawn to d4, just making Mokele Mbembe lose a piece because we would have such a lovely fork here. And there are no useful checks to escape this. So Mokele Mbembe probably saw that, but maybe it was a mouse slip, maybe it was a bit of a mistake, but he retreats the queen to d2 and it still loses a piece for him. Because, as you can see, after d4 was played, the bishop is kind of trapped. So you can only move alongside this diagonal, and each of the squares is covered with the pawn. So Mokele Mbembe is losing a piece, and he can choose whether he wants to sacrifice his bishop or sacrifice his knight. And he opts for the bishop because apparently the bishop wasn't doing that much, and knight can offer some interesting counterplay. We have pawn captures bishop, and Mokele Mbembe was very unhappy with the pawn controlling all those squares, and it's a pretty nice outpost for the pawn. So he just offered another pawn just to trade it off. And obviously Lily accepts. It's a pretty nice trade for him. And queen recaptures. An interesting alternative would be pawn recaptures to keep a strong center, but it is still fine. We have castles by Lily and a check delivered by Mokele Mbembe. It's not really clear what was to be expected from this check, why it was played, but Lily just calmly uses this opportunity to bring his king to a very safe square, and nothing threatens the black king at this point. So we have castles in this position. It is obvious that Mokele Mbembe just really wants to develop. Probably an alternative would be to develop the bishop to e2 and then castle king side, but queen side castle is still nice, and let's see how it works. Because as you see, if bishop is developed at some point, the rooks will be connected, most of the pieces will be developed, while Lily still has these pieces that are not doing all that much, and the knight is kind of controlled by the pawn, cannot be developed. So let's see how Lily acts in this position, because he clearly have more material, but his development is not as great. So he starts by bringing the queen to d6, and we have a pawn advance, which is a little bit strange. It would be probably better to just retreat with the queen a bit, because this pawn push just undermines the king's safety. It has pretty much no protection here. But let's see what's Mokele Mbembe's plan. And we have knight developed to d7. Again, at this point, probably just playing a5 would be a bit better, and trying to clear the a file for the rook, and it would be pretty dangerous because we can also bring queen in here with check, and the white king would be in a grave danger. But Lily just develops his knight to d7. We have knight to d2, and a pawn push in the middle. Let's see whether Mokele Mbembe accepts this trade. Obviously, you don't want to do that, because then you just gain an excellent square for your knight. Or you can even offer a queen trade, and Mokele Mbembe would have to accept it, because the queen and the king would be on the same line. But we see here that the pawn is pushed forward, which is a pretty nice move. And Lily still insists that he wants to trade pawns. Mokele Mbembe defends it with a4, and Lily kicks away the queen with knight to e5. The queen retreats back, and this is a very interesting position. There is a very interesting line here, which probably lets you gain an excellent advantage. So feel free to pause the video and try not the winning move, but the move that likely gives a huge advantage to black here, while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to find this move, it's pawn captures on b5. And if the pawn recaptures, then Lily gains this excellent line for his rook, and the position is completely winning here. And we can have this pretty nice check. The king, you can either block or move the king, but if you move the king, you can just allow this queen and to enter the position. So Lily will have to block, and then you can just double your rooks on the a file, and it is pretty much unplayable in this position. So it would be an excellent position for black. But in this position, Lily actually decides to play rook a to c8, and this is considered an inaccuracy because it just doesn't achieve all that much. And Mokele Mbembe gains an important tempo, maybe, to bring his knight to c4. Lily very happily trades, and Mokele Mbembe uses this opportunity to protect his pawn on b5 even more, and also opens a discovery towards the black's queen. So Lily has to sidestep. It's interesting what happens if the queen delivers the check, because if you block, you can start doubling up your rooks on the d file, and it will be a pretty tough position to defend. So Lily just opts for e5. The pawn was attacked twice, so Mokele Mbembe has to defend it with his pawn push. And Lily offers a rook trade. He is up material. He is pretty happy to trade rooks here. And Mokele Mbembe doesn't want to do that, and he just blocks it with the bishop while also connecting his rooks, and just develops his bishop. But look at the white pawns. They are almost all of them are on white squares, so this white bishop isn't doing all that great. So let's see what happens, and whether Mokele Mbembe can actually do something about this bishop. We have pawn captures, and again, instead of bringing his rook to this open file, we see just a calm knight move by Lily. We have king to d2. This move is probably played to bring the king to safety. But we have a check from the queen, blocking this e3 square for the king. And the best move here would be just bring your king to e2 or to e1. e1 is considered the best, but e2 is also completely fine. But Mokele Mbembe decides to play king to c3. He's down material. He needs a very active king, so he is trying really hard to gain at least something for his sacrifice material. And there could be some very nice lines if black just plays some random move. I don't know, let's say rook to c7, which doesn't make much sense. You can even have some discoveries towards the knight, but still it's a very tricky position because king to c3 just allows this check, and also this knight capture puts a lot of pressure on the bishop, and even this bishop captures on h7 doesn't give you any significant advantage, because you would have to spend several moves just bringing your queen into the game, and even then probably the black king would be able to escape, and also this knight covering g6 square for now would make it pretty much impossible to infiltrate the ranks. So anyway, in this position we have we have just knight developed to e5, and it's a pretty nice move for putting more pressure on the bishop. And instead of moving the bishop, Mokele Mbembe just moves the king away, and Lily happily eliminates one of the remaining defenders of Mokele Mbembe. And we have a capture fast here, several trades in a row. And even here, after Lily delivers a check on e5, Mokele Mbembe just offers a queen trade, which Lily happily accepts. And we still have this position where Lily has a bishop for a pawn, and all the remaining materials completely equal. White has a pretty active king, but still it has nowhere to go. You cannot infiltrate the black ranks through the A and B file. Your only potential moves would be trying to bring the king to the king side, but still it would be easily countered by pawn push to G5. So let's see what happens in this position. We have Lily gaining control of the open D file, and Mokele Mbembe just retreats with the king. He has not much to do in this position. Lily calmly brings his bishop to the C file, to the C8 square. It doesn't have much to do here for now, but maybe it can come to E6 and then put some pressure on the C4 pawn in the future. So let's see. And in this position, as white, you probably want to play rook to A1 and gain some control of the open file, and even some moves like rook to A8 in the future are possible, pinning the bishop and basically pinning at the same time the bishop and the rook, because if the rook moves, and the bishop just falls with check. But for some reason, Mokele Mbembe just decided to bring rook to D1, offer a rook trade, and Lily happily accepts it. And the position is pretty dire for white here, because this capture on D1 actually helps black. And I will not ask you to pause the video, because this move is pretty obvious, and it is, of course, bishop to E6, putting a lot of pressure on the C4 pawn, and it's impossible to defend it. So Mokele Mbembe tries C2. We have bishop captures, king to D2, bishop captures, and now we have two connected pass pawns on B and C files, and it's pretty much impossible for white to defend. But let's see. Mokele Mbembe never gives up in such positions, so let's see what he tries. He tries bringing his king to the king side, and finally, after being safely sitting in the H8 square, the black king tries to join the game. So Mokele Mbembe starts his expansion on the king side. We have a series of moves, and once the pawn was pushed to C4, the king has to block a potential push, and he doesn't want to let the pawn reach a queening square. But the plan is pretty obvious for black here. You just want to play bishop to A6 and then start bringing the second pawn, and it will be pretty much unstoppable for the white king. So Lily prepares this with king to E6, not allowing any sneaky moves by white king, and Mokele Mbembe has no choice but to push some pawns. Lily just calmly blocks it, and finally, after a couple moves with the pawns, he brings the bishop back to A6, and now it will be very, very hard to block the advancement, to stop the advancement of the two connected pass pawns. So Mokele Mbembe kicks away the king. King steps back. Let's check. We have king to C3. We have pawn to B5, and white is in a seemingly very dire situation, but the position is actually completely winning for white, so please feel free to pause the video for the last time and find the winning move for white. So for those of you who were able to find the winning move, congratulations on being excellent people who are aware of Lily's poor internet. And for those of you who are just here to enjoy the show, it's caused a disconnect in Lily's internet. So Mokele Mbembe just played d4, and it was in this position that Lily lost connection to chess.com, and it resulted in Mokele Mbembe getting a very nice victory here. And what a match it was, except apart from maybe a couple inconsistencies and inaccuracies in the very beginning, it was a very nicely played game by Mokele Mbembe and a well-deserved win. So big congratulations to the German master. He really fought hard, and he proved that he really knows this opening very, very well. So, but of course, Lily also showed some very nice moves, and it was a very nice match overall. So that's it. Thank you very much for watching. It was a very nice game. I really enjoyed it, and I will see you next time.